second one, that's why I do what I do now, because she was that kid that would throw herself on the floor, and I would just let her. Okay, let me know when you're ready, and I'll pick you up. So same thing with teenagers. Is like, you know what? You want to change your whole wardrobe, you want to change your friend group, you want to change this, you want to isolate yourself. And actually, it's been proven in research that teenagers starts to separate from the mom or for the parents because they're unconsciously preparing for that independence. A lot of the times it's us that we don't want to let them go. We want to
of course.
We want to protect.
Hi, it's Tiffany Lorian Galloway, certified high performance coach with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. And as you can see, my co-host Catherine is right over here with me. And we have our guest today, who is
Miss Xochitl Rodríguez. Yeah. I got that right. Yes. Ding, ding, ding. Welcome to the Resilient Mother podcast, Xochitl. And we're so happy that you have decided to join us on this episode. We're going to be talking about resilient strength. And I'm sure that is not anything strange to what you do, because you actually work with teenagers, with parents of teenagers. So that is not for the faint of heart. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, for different episodes. Very interesting. But yes, I do absolutely adore teenagers. I think you can work so much on their resilience at that age. And the parents, I love to empower them to understand their teenagers and make connections. So yes, I love what I do. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that too. Tiffany and I, we are in a new era of the Resilient Mother podcast. And, she was just kind of doing it on our own for quite some time. She brought it this far, and we are just excited about all of the guests we've had, and just moving forward to 2025 is amazing. And we're looking forward to all of the great lives that we'll touch, the mothers that we will touch, the community that we will create of resilient mothers. And this episode will be about mothering your teen, because you're right. Teenagers are really a very interesting demographic, and that's every age is interesting, but teenagers in particular are, I always say all of our children are future adults, but teenagers are that much closer to being an adult. So
some days,
well, and like,
so but they're not old enough to be grown. Not old enough to be grown, but not young enough to still be a kid.
Yes.
And
so talk to us about what you do.
Oh, Tiffany, you want to say something?
Sorry, my son was kind of overlapping. So we've got a little bit of a lag. So
we're overlapping a little bit.
And then I'll come in. Maybe we can just tag team that way.
Take turns. Well,
Tiffany, you were going to say something quite interesting just now. So you were saying something, Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that with the teenager, not only are they hit with all the hormone changes and everything, and you don't know what to anticipate, and then every kid's going to be different, but it's such an important stage for self-discovery. I feel like when I look back and look at the parent I needed in my teenage years, I really needed a parent to let me explore and establish who I am and where I fit in the world. I didn't have that. I had a very controlled, tight, in a box, very naive teenage experience that didn't really let me explore. And I wasn't necessarily the rebellious teenager. And so I feel like it's just important as a mom to get it right and to create the ability to try and fail and not be put down about it. But I think too, it's important as a mom to let go of the expectation of them being anything like you. Yes. They're meant to be their own person. It's okay if they like different things, and they're definitely not there to fulfill your dreams for you. And I think the teenage years are really pivotal for those few points. But I'm so curious to hear your point of view, what resilience means, and how you feel. Why did you decide to specialize in teens of all things?
Yes, I know, right? Why did I take that risk? So I mean, you're right, and that's one of the things that I preach when I coach parents or my coaching program, where it's your teenagers are not there to fulfill your dreams; they're there for a purpose. We are parents to guide them and give them all the tools they need to explore who they are, to understand their personality. But so I let's start with the teenage years. I mean, we know babies, they cry when they need food and they need to be changed and things like that. We know toddlers are going to throw tantrums, and we know they're going to, they're going to push boundaries. We know teenagers are hormonal, they have mood changes, they have all these things, and still I feel like we're not prepared for those ages. Like we're still surprised that they have attitudes, that they have moods, and they're like, we've known this, like you've been there, like don't lie to yourself. Right. So, but we're still kind of surprised about this, and we're taken back, and we don't, like you said, we don't give them time, we don't give them the space, a safe space for them to be that age. Like I said, with toddlers, we let them throw the tantrum. I mean, I was a mom that with my first kid, she was a goody, and she never did that, like throw tantrums in the middle of Target. My second one, that's why I do what I do now, because she was that kid that would throw herself on the floor, and I would just let her. Okay, let me know when you're ready, and I'll pick you up. So same thing with teenagers. Is like, you know what, you want to change your whole wardrobe, you want to change your friend group, you want to change this, you want to isolate yourself. And actually, it's been proven in research that teenagers starts to separate from the mom or for the parents because they're unconsciously preparing for that independence. A lot of the times it's us that we don't want to let them go. We want to, of course. We want to protect, and we call protection, but sometimes it's too overbearing. And like Tiffany said, it's like we want them to be something. And because we know what they can be, we want them to be that right now. And that's not the case. Right. I'm 47. I'm not even there yet.
Right. Yeah. Well, I completely, I agree with that 100%, because I think that it's a process, right? And so we need to allow them their process. And you're absolutely right. When they're trying to figure out themselves, also they're going through a lot of angst. They're caught right in the middle of your world and their world, because their world is different from your world. They have a whole world of peers and teachers and other adults and expectations on this side, and then there's you at home. And when they were smaller, you were everything to them. So now they're having to navigate these two worlds, right? And a lot of times, we're not patient enough to allow that to happen. I think we worry about our fears. We're scared of this, we're scared of that. And then sometimes we end up pushing them further away because of our fears. So I'll tell you one quick thing. My daughter, who's an adult, my adult daughter, when she was 11, I remember, I don't remember it right now, but I was cleaning out the house a couple of weeks ago, and I found all these books that said, will my daughter hate me forever? And I had bought that around when she was about 10, 11 years old. And it was a really tough time in my life that I literally don't remember, because we became best friends again. We were best friends, and then we became best friends again. But during that moment, it was crazy. And we have to, as parents, really help them to navigate those two worlds and not put the pressure, so here and not here sometimes, but ensuring that they are going to come to you. Because when you start the judgment, or you start putting down the law, and I'm sure this is the work that you do, that this is not anything new that I'm saying, but I think just kind of like guiding parents through these processes, Right.
Yes. So communication patterns change. Remember that teenagers, they're developing their frontal lobe. That's the decision-making part of the brain. So they're not there. They're not even close to there until they're like in their 20s, some 30, some 47. But they're still developing that. So this is the time where we want to make sure that we teach them about values, about the abstract concepts of life, about resiliency, about communication, like I said, how to regulate emotions and things like that. And when they're driving us crazy, and we don't regulate our emotions ourselves, that's what they're learning at that point. So they run away. So the communication is very different. I always tell parents that your preaching and teaching years are over. By the time they're 12, your preaching and teaching years are over. Your discipline has been established. Now it's time to listen, ask and listen, or 80% of the time. And then only 20% of the time is giving them instruction at the right time, at the right moment.
Right.
Because we just want to keep preaching them. they're going to check out.
Yeah.
They're going to check out.
Yeah. And that's what I said. That's what I said too. Like I had to trust them. I had to trust what I was teaching them, that they were now going to be able to put those things in action. But it was up to them. I couldn't be around like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? So it's the trust. And that's tough. But it's our fear. And I think, Tiffany, you're going through that now as well. Both of you have teenagers.
Oh man, am I ever. And I have to remember I'm the teacher. Like I'm the teacher. And the other thing is I got to practice what I preach too, because even though I think they're not watching or they're not listening, they are. They totally are. And it comes out in different places and different environments. And sometimes I'm like, yay, they were listening. And other times I'm like, oh, they were listening. But I really like too, you talked about discipline and teaching, because as you were talking, I was thinking like, I think we get hung up on the discipline part instead of the teaching part sometimes. And that's a huge transition. I mean, when they're little and we have to keep them safe for different reasons, I think there is a little bit more structure and discipline, but I like the word teaching better because it's like more intentional. Like what is my intention with what I am saying and what I'm doing? And when at least my teenager feels my heart and my intention, the conversation always goes a lot better. But if I just go in there with my fear or my trigger or my issue, that never helps.
No. And that's why I always recommend for parents to, especially when they're about to enter those years, for us to do our own work, to get off our emotion, because sometimes the teenager is going to tell you more than one time, I hate you, I don't like this, why you like this, none of the other moms are like this, and things like that. And if you haven't done your work, that can cut deep. And then you react, and then you become this battle with your teenager. And that's the last thing that you want to do. You want to create that safe environment for them to express, you know what, I know that's how you're feeling right now, sweetie. Sometimes I feel like giving up too, or like I hate somebody, but it's really like once you process your emotion and you regulate it, then it's a different story. But give them that space and not react. And when we have not done our own work, we react.
Well, and don't assume anything. There's been times too that I realized I just should have listened. I knew something was off, but I was completely wrong about what was off. Yes. And I would have, if I just went in listening, that would have come out instead of, because and then they change. Sometimes they're a total contradiction too. So like, it's just, they're
teenagers. That's what they do. They don't know what they want yet. And yes, they're looking at you for guidance. And I always say in my workshops and things like that, like open-ended questions, like kill them with open-ended questions, because that's how you're going to get, that's how you're going to really understand where they're standing at.
Absolutely. Like care about their opinion enough to ask, right? And actually listen and take it into consideration. I was going to say, when you were just saying about, when they start comparing to how this person gets to do this, but they don't get to do that. And I remember I wrote this in my first book, actually. And, I wrote this where, I was just saying, I'm not their mother, but that wasn't a good enough answer. So I remember feeling guilty because one of my sons said, oh, how come they always have pizza or takeout or, all this stuff, but we always have to have, rice and meat and, why do we always have to have a cooked meal? Like, why can't you? And I felt so bad because I couldn't afford it. Right. So it was me being on my budget and of course not even thinking because as a mother you can feel so guilty right away. That can cut you, right? You're not right away. I didn't think, oh, I'm giving them a healthier meal. I didn't think that. I was just like, oh my gosh, poor kids, everybody else is getting to eat pizza and chicken wings and blah blah blah, and I just can't afford it. And so I remember like a week after he had said that, and I must have cried myself to sleep. And wondering if can I get a second job to afford chicken wings and pizza every night. and he came back and he said, what's for dinner? And I said, let's get pizza. And he's like, I don't feel like pizza. Do we have any chicken? Can you make your barbecue chicken that I love? And I was just like, what? Yes, I can.
yes. And mom feels it's such a real thing.
Yeah, it just taught me that, sometimes in that moment when you start comparing yourself to other houses or other parents or other stuff, like you're just beating yourself up for no reason. And Tiffany, that's my thing. Stop beating yourself up. Stop kicking your own butt. And, here's my kid saying, listen, they always have takeout. That's all they eat. They don't even eat a healthy meal. And I was like, what is my 13-year-old telling me right now when I was feeling so guilty about, not being able to afford pizza? So sometimes we just have to allow them to kind of lead us to a solution or lead us to something, and just go with it in that moment. Just go with it, because somehow it comes around, and they get it. They get it. And so,
like I said,
I think that's
a real thing in comparison. Comparison can be very dangerous. And for me, also, the mom guilt came a lot from being a working mom and not doing all the volunteer things and going to the field trips when they were younger and not doing all the things. But at one point, I asked myself, if I know my daughter has a potential to be an astronaut, let's just say that, and I want her to not see her kids as a burden for her not to be an astronaut. Like the kids are never something that will not allow you to work on your dreams. So I explained that since they were little, because I am not a pro for, like, a supporter for lying to kids. I mean, it was hard for me to even hold that conversation. It was so hard for me, and my ex-husband and I would go back and forth. But like I always tell them, like, I'm working on this because I want to be a professional. And yes, you have to kind of slow down when your kids are little, a little bit, but doesn't mean that you have to give up on your dreams, because that's the example that I wanted to set for my girls. That because you're a woman, you don't have to slow down. You can keep going. You can work. And I spend time with you, and that quality time, it's very important. And I learned this from another parenting program. Now I cannot remember of the name, but it's like, you got stuck with a good mom. So that's why you don't get to do the things that the other parents did or didn't do,
I love that. I love that. So ladies, if you're listening, that's what you tell them. You got stuck with a good mom. That's why.
Well, I'm not sorry for it.
I recently heard that your children are only to aspire to the level that you get to. And you don't get to use your kids as an excuse for not pursuing your dreams. Why would you put that on them?
Yeah, it's a burden, but we don't realize it. Yeah. Because probably that burden was put on us. And I know it was in my case.
Yeah.
So
sure.
And it's just a balance.
I remember. Yeah, for sure. Even because you're right. And maybe because my mom is Spanish as well, because my mom wanted to be a nurse. And so she was a teenage pregnancy. So she always, my whole life, I remember hearing her say, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be a nurse. And I hated the sight of blood. And so I was here going, I'm going to be a nurse for my mom, I'm going to be a nurse for my mom. And then every time I'd see blood, I'd be like, oh God, it's like, I can't be a nurse. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I cannot be a nurse, But it's true. Sometimes parents put those things on their kids, and we need to give them the freedom, right? And just for them to know that we're there. We're going to support them, and we're going to, and just that's a resilient strength, right? Because we're teaching them that. Now, I know, Xochitl, you do a lot of stuff. You create online courses. You have a book coming out. You have a podcast. Tell us a little bit about the stuff that you're doing in your world.
So I have been doing mental health and being a therapist for teenagers and families for about 15 years, but most of the time I got overbooked, and I get so many questions, and I see so many parents desperate for information. So I was like, how can I scale this for parents to have the tools? And one of the things that God has gifted me with, one big thing, I'm not very athletic, I'm not very pretty, I'm not very articulate, but I do have a lot of common sense. And I saw the connection that I could create with the teenagers, and then the parenting aspect of it. So I would start coaching the parents. So to scale it, I created Enjoy Parent-Teens and Parent-Teens for teenagers. So that it's practical. Like I said, I talk about how to change and switch your discipline, how to set boundaries, healthy boundaries for teenagers when they're 13. How is it different for their 15 and they were 18, and things like that. And so I talk about giving them freedom, how to create responsibility, chores at the house, how to even start that. And again, communication is a big piece. So I worked on that, and it's been released, and it's there, and it's been very successful. And I get very good feedback from parents, just because it's very simple, practical strategies that you can do, and you can change every day. It's like, oh, if I change this little thing, then the whole relationship with my teenager changes. And the thing is that when you're building that relationship with your teenager, that's a relationship you're going to have for the rest of their lives. So whatever happens in the teenage years is,
Absolutely.
and we cannot have the mentality like when they're 18, they're out of the house and you forget about them. No, guess what? They're coming back. So it's again, having that lasting relationship and a genuine connection.
And I've had that conversation.
They're yours for life.
Yes. Yes.
And I love that
Tiffany?
perspective. I love that perspective because a friend of mine in her like 60s or 70s who's already raised kids. I love wisdom from the older ladies. Thank you, wisdom. I was struggling with my teen. I mean, the minute she hit 13, holy Toledo, she's 14 now. And the communication needed to change, but I didn't know how it needed to change. Mm-hmm. I had parents who did not like having teenagers. They liked the little kids that they knew how to do the little kids, and they liked the admiration, and they liked the ability to control. And when we were not controllable anymore, they like freaked out and didn't really know what to do. So
who are you?
Yeah, who am I? And I just learned to be the obedient child who just like stayed out of trouble, so they'd leave me alone, which wasn't really helpful either because I wasn't exploring who I was. I was just learning how to dart being out of trouble. But the woman told me when I was struggling with her, it's like, my big heart is I want my children to want to have a relationship with me when they're an adult. I fully realized they could choose at 18 to be like, I don't want you.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I sat my teen down and we had this conversation about how, okay, you're starting to figure out who you are. You are starting to figure out different things. And I want you to know, I understand there's going to be changes and I'm going to give you room to explore that. And I want you to know, I want this relationship to grow as you grow, because I want to have eventually an adult to adult relationship with you, adult parent, adult child. And I get that it's going to be different. So as we go through this, can you give me some grace? Can we realize we're both working on this together? And, you know, sometimes I'm going to get it right. Sometimes I'm going to get it wrong. I've never done this before.
Exactly.
And that really helped. And then another conversation we had when that still wasn't quite working was one around, okay, so what are your goals? I'm going to come to you. I'm not going to tell you what your goals are. I'm not going to tell you what to be. So can we stop communicating like that instead? Like, okay, what's your goal today? So I can support you. What are you thinking about? What is your plan for the future? And if it changes, that's fine. But just keep me up to date, because I do want to be able to support you. But you're going to have to communicate either your needs or your goals to me now, because you're old enough to. And those two conversations have really made a huge difference in our ability to communicate. I still don't always get it right, and I apologize. But those two conversations completely changed where our relationship was before.
Yes. That's two of the things that I highlight on my program too. It's like, first, admit the fact that you don't know what you're doing. Because even if you have more than one kid, each kid is different. So you don't know what you're doing. And two, you are not the perfect mom. We are not the perfect mom. It doesn't matter how many letters I have after my name, years of experience in the therapy room. And I mean, and we're in this field. There's a lot of moms are in the medical, like a lot of my clients are from the medical field or engineers and things like that, that their communication pattern is completely different than the the humanitarians or the the people that work with people. So those are the parents that need the most help. And in my opinion, and we're all different. So everybody, needs different things. But having that communication right there opens a safe space for the teenager.
Yeah. And when you're a really smart person, you just expect that you know a lot of stuff, and what you're telling your teenagers makes so much sense, and they should just listen to what you're saying. And you've forgotten that when you were a teenager, it was not like that at all. And what you really wanted was someone to respect you.
Yes.
And respect that you're an actual human being. And it's not, and it's not just that, they're these cute little clones of us. No, they're actually functioning human beings. And when they're out of your sight, especially teenagers, when they are out of your sight, they are living their life. And you can only hope that the building blocks that you've put in their lives, or the foundation, that they're making good decisions, because you cannot be everywhere. And so that's why it's so important to have that relationship with them, because some of them will smile with you and say yes in front of you, and behind your back they are wreaking havoc, and the havoc is on their own lives.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, they're going to suffer the most. Now, I know also, Xochitl, I looked at your Instagram and I saw that you do a lot of work with teen suicide. And that is very, very, very crucial, because that's, when we're talking about resilient strength, we're talking about, having the strength enough to work yourself through, this very devastating epidemic, basically.
Reality.
And the more that one achieves it, the more attractive it looks to another one, because it's like, oh, so that I can do that. That's an out for me. And these are very vulnerable populations, right? When we're talking about teenagers that are not fully developed, what we have to live for, they don't have to live for yet. The conscience that we have, that's not developed yet. So that's an easy out. So that's some serious work that you're doing. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, and that's something that I took over just recently in the last couple of months, because there has been way too many. And I don't want to cry, but there's been way too many suicides just in the schools where my house is connected to, and the college where my oldest daughter goes to. And we have to think of the reality. So I was a play therapist when I started my mental health journey. So in the beginning of my journey, I had, kids 5, 6, 7, 8 years old in my playroom, and they would play with the specific toys that we have as therapists. About 5, 6 years ago, I started noticing the trend that the kids couldn't play with the toys. They wanted something to click. They wanted a phone. They wanted something to make noise. And I wonder at that time, like, where is this going to take us? And we have to accept the fact that the teenagers right now is the first generation that this is their way of communication since they were babies. Wow. Yeah. So we are missing that human connection that we so need as human beings. We're relational beings. So we're missing that connection with parents because we're distracted too. We have more goals. The world is moving so fast. Teenagers with their friends, they don't talk about it anymore. Everything's through the phone. So they're missing that link of connection and relation. Yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with this is called the anxious generation, the teenagers right now. And that brings that result of suicide because I dealt with a client about 3 weeks ago where they don't really understand. They hear it, but they don't really understand the repercussions of suicide or what it actually means. Right. They just know that they take a bunch of pills, they're going to be dead. But because we don't have that relationship anymore. Yeah. So it's building because that connection.
It's that moment. Yeah. It's the moment, what that's going to achieve, but then there's no long-term thought process. And that's obviously a mature thought process. But also, you touched on something very, very crucial. The world that we are living in, when you were talking about the phones. Yeah. They're so sterile because if you ever read the comment section, people are so mean. People will say anything, and they don't. It's not even like you're really talking to a human being. You're talking about a human being that could read this stuff, and so that just tells you how disconnected people are to humanity, to humanness, to things that are appropriate or not appropriate. And if that's your child's whole world, then you've kind of set them up in a way, to belong to this type of society that does not care about them.
Right.
Well, it's dehumanized us.
Yes.
They don't see the result of what those words have done to somebody. They don't see the reaction. They don't see the pain that they cause. Because if they did the same thing in person and saw the result of their actions, you better believe it would be different.
It's completely
generation doesn't understand the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. There's no concept of that.
Yeah.
And I've lived through what you've been talking about with one of my daughters. And the only saving grace is I had been through some of that myself, but she really didn't understand. It had just been a peer thing. It had just been what other kids were doing, what she had been exposed to much earlier than I ever had. I mean, I hadn't heard some of this stuff till I was 16, and that was only because I had a friend who had mental health issues. So to have somebody at 12 being exposed to this stuff, and it's just there from another peer at school or online, I really tried to limit phones and electronics for as long as I can, but there's a point where they need it for homework now. I mean, my kids didn't have electronics until COVID, and I'm curious about the change. So I'm glad they had that foundation. But now I have a little one who's about to walk over here, who's not supposed to, but I'll edit that later. It's his whole world.
Yeah.
And luckily, you've been using everything positively. Like I've been in personal development groups and Zooms, and he sees me working on things, and like he sees it as a tool because I used it as a tool.
Right.
And so that helps. But I still worry about this technology part and it's a big piece. And I'm glad we've moved towards teens having Instagram teen accounts.
Right.
That's a move in the right direction. Thank God for that. But there's so much more work to be done.
But we cannot forget that they still need that link of relationship and connection. That technology, it is a tool, and we use it. And don't even get me started with AI, because that's scary stuff. Like, even but you and I, we understand what it is to have a connection. We know what it is to chat with somebody. We know how that feels. This generation doesn't. Unless it's through the phone, they don't know what that is. So they're missing the whole link. And that's why it's so important that the communication, I stress it so much about communicating. Spend 15 minutes with your kid every day, undivided attention, no phones, just ask questions, listen, because so that they understand that connection that they're missing from the world.
Yeah, we're in a very scary time, and you think it can't get worse, and it does. And all of those things are actually, things that we use to help us as well in our lives. But as parents, we have to be so vigilant, 100%, and kind of remember what our parents did or our grandparents did, or like go way back. And like you said, take away that technology for 15 minutes a day, like get to know your child. Pay attention to your child. We're in very serious times. And we definitely have to do that. And we want to thank you so much because of all the great stuff you're doing out there. Tell our listening and viewing, ladies and moms that are watching, where they can catch up with you. And, we'll obviously put that in the comments as well, but just so they can find you, because we'd love for our people to follow your people and just create that larger community that's continuing to support one another so that we're raising, amazing, healthy people.
Absolutely. And yes, it's part of the village. I know I needed a big village. I still need a big village, especially with my little one, because she's just like me. But yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. All my handles is Parenting with Xochitl. You probably need to spell my name right now when you're looking at the screen, because it's not an easy name, but it's Parenting with Xochitl. Or if you Google Enjoy Parenteens, like I said, it's not parenting, but it's parenteens with the teens at the end. Then you can find my website, and my website is just xochitrodriguez.com. And my Instagram, I give a lot of valuable information, topics, sometimes, things that I'm going on with my clients. I discuss it on Instagram or on my social media, or if they send me a message, hey, Xochitl, what do I do about the situation? If one person is asking, then a lot of people need the answer. And you know what? I like to teach. That's my purpose in life, is to teach. And so I share the tools that God has provided me with, the experience, the mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I that's one thing that I do is have common sense. So I will try to, to answer the questions, but that's where you can find me. Instagram, Facebook.
Where can they find your courses, and where can they find your podcast for our Spanish speaking, ladies that are in the audience?
So my online course, you can find it on my website, xochitrodriguez.com. Everything is linked through all my socials, so you can find it easily. In Spanish, It's Platícalo con Xochitl. So it's Speak It with Xochitl, I guess, if I translate it, but it's Platícalo con Xochitl. I share the exact same information in English and in Spanish. So everything I do one video or one podcast, and the podcast is only in Spanish for right now to eliminate the stigma, because in our community, there's still a lot of stigma about mental health. So that's my podcast, Platícalo con Xochitl. It's on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we especially in the Caribbean, we have Caribbean and Hispanic communities. We do have this stigma where, that you're strong enough, you don't need to talk to anybody about it. There's this very secretive part of our stuff too, where our parents will tell us not to talk our business and not to tell this one and that one. And we didn't come out of that because, in order for us to even support each other, we're going to just have to open up and just, find our tribe.
You're right.
For sure.
And things change, times change. Now we know more information. I'm not blaming my mother for raising me the way that she did. That's the best that she could do at that time with what she knew and what she had. So now we know more. Now we do more research, and now we know better, so we can do better.
Yes. Do better because we know better.
All about. We want to help all moms to be resilient no matter your walk of life. This is inclusive. We want to see every point of view. We want to talk about every subject that needs to be opened up like this. So this is a safe space for moms. We want to help you and we want to help your kids, especially with all the challenges that we're facing, and they're constantly changing every day. So if you found value in this, please comment below, continue the conversation, reach out to one of us, share this with someone who needs it. We are here for you, and we're building a network. We're building a place for all mothers worldwide. Let's power up together. Let's bring these conversations, these tools, the resources to one place that we can all connect. Let's make it happen. That's what the Resilient Podcast bigger picture is. So thank you for listening today and being one of those strong moms. I believe in your resilient strength. Go out there. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. God bless. And we'll see you next time on the Resilient Mother Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe so we can share this message. We are a worldwide podcast with guests all around the world, and we want to continue to grow this community. You can find us on socials. You could also be a guest. Look for that link below if you'd be interested in being a guest on the podcast. If you know a sponsor or would like to be a sponsor, please reach out to me or Catherine as well.
Sure. We want you all on this journey. We want to hear your stories. We want to share your stories. We want to gain strength from each other because together we're stronger. And to never forget the blessing of being a mother and what we're creating. We're creating the future every single day of our lives. So get on this train with us and let's do this thing, moms.
I believe in you. Believe in yourself. God bless. And we'll see you around. Take care.